maximums on these lots should be adjusted based on the impact it would have for
And
most
that
lots.
might be appropriate.
I mean,
The
because
floor, we might consider raising the maximum floor area ratio.
I mean, I think that makes sense to look at the different areas to where this gets where this has created the most problems in the past. You know, for those people that don't know or haven't experienced this type of approval, it's usually someone trying to get the most house on a lake lot is where I've seen this historically happen the most, because we've got these nice narrow 50-foot wide lots that are, you know, 150 foot deep, and there's a huge benefit to getting the most house on there. Where in RE2 and RE3, it's usually not a big concern. So I think, along with the change makes tons of sense. I think you can go out and measure this.
I can.
And I mean, there's going to be odds and ends to the terrain where it's sloping isn't symmetrical either, but you can start snapping lines and say this counts, this doesn't, and that might affect where they put their house and other things. So I appreciate that this will be clearer, and all the negotiation is going to be on how it's measured in your office as opposed to in front of here.
Right.
But I'd
Or
like
the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yeah. So, but I think I don't know if I'm ready to. We're not looking for a code
Oh,
update
gosh,
tonight.
no, gosh, no,
But
this is just
if we
the
could-
first step to
if we
pick
could look at-
questions, explain it once.
Yeah. So my homework to the team is Roger. Is really seeing any possible suggestions and work with Scott where maybe that floor area cap should be raised, and by how much makes sense, and then we can think about the possible repercussions of doing that. Like, that might be negative, so we don't have unintended consequences.
But my general philosophy on it is I don't want it to make buildings bigger. I don't want them to make them smaller. I want them to make them about the same type of things that we've been approving, right? Just you should be able to know exactly what you can finish, which is just about everything, and walk away with that when you're done.
In that recent example, I think it might have been the same homeowner. We're recommending making a spot on the interior footprint of his house only 5 feet tall for his utility room or something. It seemed a little silly, like what we're actually asking him to do, and it wouldn't have changed the mass of the building at all. It was really putting a cap on a particular room so it would be utility in that floor space. I mean, some of those things this will take care of that.
Yeah.
Not everything, it'll take care of a lot of things.
Something to think about. Some of you have experience in doing this yourselves, some of you don't, right? And I will say that I've taken this draft format and I've sent it out to 24 people in the city of Delafield that I know have had experience with this. Either a neighbor that's had it built next to them, somebody that's tried to build it, or somebody that bought a property. And I've asked them for their inputs as well, and their comments will be included in the next Planning Commission agenda, which will most likely be for discussion again. We're changing a code here that affects a lot of people, and I want to make sure that we think it through. Any other homework? All right. Thank you. We'll move on to 6A, DLC 0734.989-4024 Nagwicka Road, Heartland. Owner, University Lake School. Applicant, Sunvest Solar Incorporated. Applicant seeks approval for amended conditional use permit and site plan to accommodate installation of solar collection system north of Vedelson Road. Recommend to council of the same. Do we have the applicant here?
Yep.
Come on up.
Hi.
Hello.
Name and everything again? Kirk Kindred, Sunvest Solar, N24W24025, Paul Court, Pewaukee, Wisconsin.
Right.
So what you're looking at there with the revised design is the accommodating the 30-foot setbacks that we were asked to from the property lines, which just rotated the array a little bit to the southwest rather than perfectly south, but still fits.
I think the Planning Commission might also like to rest assured that this is an area of prairie restoration, so there are actually no trees of any value that need to come down in order to make this happen. They've respected the setbacks as Kurt identified, and they've also included a fence, a containment fence that we discussed last time, just to make sure that it's on the plans illustrated and everyone understands what it is.
Does everybody understand where this is?
The reason the reason we went through a public hearing on this is simply because ULS is governed by an existing conditional use, so any changes on the site warrants site plan amendment, which is an attachment to the conditional use. And your recommendation this evening for approval, if you choose to pursue this project, will be a recommendation to the council of the same.
So I have a question about the fence. How tall is it and what's it look like? Is this a 6 foot tall?
6 foot chain
Cyclone?
link. Cyclone fence. Yeah.
Is there, because it's a lot of fence to look at from base, it's a trade-off from what is there. Are there options for a earth tone fence of any type along the road there? I mean, I've seen them. I think that would be a reasonable ask to have
Like
the.
same fence, but like colored, powder coated or something, or what do you?
Yeah, just not something that looks like a jail, you know, like a solar panel jail. But I mean, it's just a big area. But so yeah,
It would look similar to the fence that's around like school over here.
clay or, you know, I don't know, Roger, if you, in your experience, if you've seen.
There's
There's anything
vinyl
like
coated chain link fence.
Isn't
Yeah.
this lot depressed? The lot sits down 6 feet. So basically a
Little bit,
6-foot fence, you're looking at the top of it from the road. I don't think you're gonna hide
In some
anything.
areas,
You're
I
not
think
gonna
that's
screen
true.
anything with a
But
fence.
it's a highly visible area. You're in your car driving by. When you look over the edge, you're going to see the fence.
Well, you're gonna see the solar panels. I don't think a fence will screen much.
I guess my concern isn't really
So
the
I-
screen.
I don't know about-
I know we're not going to screen the solar panels. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking
Visually more
to
aesthetic.
blend the fence out of the picture and the whatever ground is there, just a little bit.
I mean, we could look at other options, but I think, you know, obviously, cost is always a concern with any project, but.
It's going to be there a while.
30 years, yep,
Yeah, 30 years, am I remembering that right?
yep,
Yeah.
30 years.
Would you consider planting vines so that they can twine in the chain link fence and actually hide it?
That'd be more of a maintenance.
Maintenance issue?
Yeah, maintenance. Usually don't want stuff disrupting, because then the fence starts breaking down. Usually don't want anything growing on it.
So, I mean, can you give us some options?
I mean, we could look at a vinyl coated one or a powder coated, a different color or something other than just a regular,
they have a
you know,
vinyl
regular
green one.
fence.
Match the green.
We haven't
background.
spec'd out the fence. It's obviously
Until the winter comes.
an asset that's going to belong to We Energy, so it's going to be more like what you would see around a
Power
substation.
utilities.
All right, no, I get it.
substation.
Yeah, like what you'd see around a substation.
Any barbed wire?
No barbed wire. No.
Would you want to consider additional landscape plantings? Hedges, 6-foot hedges that would hide the fence.
Could consider that, sure, and I think the school might even take on some of those projects. You know, just to create a natural buffer. Nothing that's going to grow very tall, obviously, if it's going to be to the south.
That'd be preferable, actually. Go with their budget, you know, budget fence and figure out some landscaping that would just help.
Even if it just breaks it up.
Yeah, break, that's the word I was thinking too.
Yeah,
isn't
not
it?
like a full
Instead of
wall,
that,
just,
Right.
Like a big pen.
yeah,
If we
like,
just
No
break it
no
up.
arborvitae because the deer will eat them, but
right. And then the
gotta
deer go on the
feed them.
fence and then they get stuck. Yeah, I'm sure we could, you know, soften that a little bit.
So you'd be willing to work with staff to come up with a landscape plan that would help
Yeah.
break up the
Yeah,
visual
the visual
viewing
aesthetics
of the fence?
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, let's do that.
Yeah, there's room there, obviously.
Yep, yep.
All right. So I'll make a motion to approve the Sunvest Solar application for a conditional use permit and site plan for the solar collection system, and recommend to common council the same, contingent upon working with staff for some landscaping on the exterior of the fence.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 6B, DLC 0793.049, 401 Main Street, Delafield, owner applicant, seeks feedback on downsizing the approved 4-unit residential condominium. Recommend to council of the same. See the applicants here?
Good evening, John Coots, I'm a site general, 215 East Wisconsin Avenue, Neshota.
Just give us a brief overview of what you're trying to do.
Sure, this is the proposed 4-unit condo building called Point Crossing of Delafield. It's been through the Plan Commission, was previously reviewed and approved, and then we came back because of the conditional use approval requirement for this site to ask for a smaller building, something that's usually not needed, but due to the zoning, that's what we're here for. So we did have it before you last month for initial review and comments, and we received no additional comments back from the Plan Commission or the city planner, so our final submittal is here tonight for hopeful second approval, and then take it to the city council next month.
Roger, anything to add?
Not really. This is just a straightforward reduction. The plans, the grading, the landscaping, they've all been revised accordingly, and the amount of grading and stormwater changes are not substantial enough to even incur another review of it. Just for everyone's knowledge, the footprint of the building went from 6,200 square feet down to 4,000 square feet, and the range of your typical units went from 3,100 down to 2020. So it's a considerable reduction. I think it's not going to look out of place. I think it's still going to be a very attractive building and well positioned on the site.
So the rest of the site has not changed at all?
Green space has actually increased due
green
to
space
the
has
revised footprint.
Motion to approve the Point Crossing residential development as presented this evening and recommend that to the council
Second.
as well.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One
Ed,
more.
Ed, did you second that motion? Or Jim?
Jim?
Thank you. Not Ed, Jim.
Jim?
Thanks.
The other Ed.
All right,
Thank
6D, DLC 0799.982.003, 296 South Genesee Street, Delafield owner applicant. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one ahead. 6C, DLC 0793.014.002, 515 Wells Street, Delafield owner Hendricks Commercial Properties LLC, applicant Delafield Hospitality LLC. Applicant seeks approval for a business plan of operation, architectural modifications, and permit building signage for America's Continental Eatery. Hours of operations are Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 12 a.m., Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 a.m., with 8 full-time employees and 11 part-time employees. Chef Becker, tell us about the new great restaurant you want to open.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I'm very excited to be in Delafield, very excited to be a part of the community. I wanted to speak before, but I'm not here yet, so I'll be quiet for a few minutes. I'll do that a little bit later. With that said, the building is located as 515. It was called Wards, I believe, before, and then Prime 1. It's a beautiful building. At this point where you're looking at the picture, it is different colors. Now it's completely white, so the signage will complement it in white and black. Americas is going to be basically the entire hemisphere of Americas, starting from Canada, going all the way to the tip of Brazil. And that way I get to play as a chef. I get to bring different flavors to you. Hopefully it's going to be a phenomenon. I love the building because it has sufficient amount of outdoor seating. It's got beautiful topography as far as backwards, forward is not too in your face. And the only thing that we're proposing is taking the 3 windows that are, or actually 4 windows that are downstairs and turning them into garage doors. The garage doors, I looked really hard to find something that complements the upper windows and the character of the building. And the plans that are in front of you, you will see they have that beautiful carriage house or carriage doors that you would use. And they would complement perfectly the windows above. And those only gonna go 3/4 way down, so they're gonna sit on a seal and it's not gonna go all the way to the floor, because another thing that I always think about is the diner. The diner needs privacy. When you're eating, you do not want your feet to be outside. You want it to be protected inside the restaurant, and that's what we have done.
Roger?
You are being asked this evening to consider three things. That is a business plan of operation, first of all. This is an appropriate use. There's been a restaurant there before. The hours are appropriate. The outdoor dining, Chef Fecker has consented to limit service in the outdoors. We've recommended 10 o'clock to be consistent with the other restaurants that do outdoor dining downtown. The subject of continued service and music would also be limited to 10 o'clock as well. The proposed signage conforms to the downtown guidelines, and it's appropriate. It's no more signage than what was on the building originally. And the architecture, in my opinion, is very sympathetic to the downtown design guidelines. I think he did a wonderful job in finding something that would complement the building and still have a historic value to it. My recommendation to you is to approve this. This is a simple site plan approval. He could file for a building permit tomorrow.
Quick question. Does the railing still stay there that's in front of the doors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do.
Okay, and you're saying then that the bottom layer, for lack of better, the windows, that bottom row is going to be static, and the
It's going to
top
be
is
solid, correct.
Okay,
It's going
okay.
to be solid, so the window can sit on it.
Gotcha,
Yes, correct.
okay.
It's essentially a knee wall. It's going to separate the dining
Yeah,
room from the
right,
porch.
gotcha.
Correct.
The railing is illustrated here because you still have the porch that's outside of the doors.
Gotcha.
I would make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
And so
Bob seconded.
that includes the hours of operation that you,
I would suggest your motion should include a revision to the hours of, or limitation to the outdoor service.
All right, I
Is that
will
till 10 p.m., was it?
add on
Yes.
that to the discontinued table service and the music to 10 p.m.
Yes,
Does the
that's-
second agree to that?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
any recipes, any questions?
Later.
It's great.
We'll be there.
Yeah.
I can't
We'll
wait.
absolutely be there.
Thank you. Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. Welcome to the city of Delafield.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a lot simpler. See, we are
clapping.
open for business here.
Despite,
We are open for business.
Okay, 6D, DLC 0799.982.003, 296 South Genesee Street, Delafield owner applicant Eric Zwag. Nazewag. Applicant seeks special exception approval of an accessory building that exceeds the maximum area for a residential property. Come on up.
Let's go with Nizwag,
Nazewag.
just for fun. So Aaron Nizwag, 296 South Genesee.
Roger?
This item is on the agenda this evening because it's the way we handled the neighbor. There was a previous petition last year for an oversized accessory building by the neighbor. There was 2 lots to the south. In that case, the intended use was actually for a horse barn. Aaron has explained that his intent is not to use this for agricultural purposes. The little catch we have is that he's zoned agricultural, and agricultural, there's really no size limit to accessory buildings if they're used for agricultural purposes. His use is actually residential. So we just thought it might be wise to have it come to the Plan Commission so that you're all aware of it. We encourage you to approve it as a non-agricultural building in the agricultural zone, because after all, it is residential in use. And I can explain more if you think you need to, but that's basically.
Well, what is the size of the building?
The size of the building is 1620. It's 420 square feet over the allowable maximum for residential use.
how big is the lot?
10 acres.
Oh,
So what does residential use mean? I mean, I know what it means, but what does it mean to you?
It's going to be used for livestock and machine shed, basically.
Oh,
So,
so you are going to have horses in it?
yeah, I think when we were exchanging, we were talking about business use, have no business use.
Right,
So
okay.
purely for, our kids are accumulating animals and I accumulate things with engines, so
Create an animal with an engine.
even better.
Yeah.
So no, that's its intended use. Aesthetically, my wife maintains complete control, so it will look lovely and complementary to the existing home.
How far is this building going to be from the home? Do you know?
I don't know, and this is not a scalable drawing. Aaron, can you answer that?
We are 23 feet off the septic, and so, over 30 feet off of that brick patio that you see, which is in pretty rough shape, right, come on anyway.
Yeah, because it's like,
30 feet off our, we got 30 feet setbacks off the neighbors as well.
What's behind that?
Which way is behind?
On that picture to the right.
East?
To the right?
East, yeah.
It just opens up, so our lot is an L, and so it wraps around, and then the majority of the lot sits below that.
It's quite a
There you go.
substantial lot.
Right there.
it's right here.
Yep.
And
Houses.
the accessory building would be placed roughly in this location. There's an
The
existing,
deceiving thing is, once you hit the
Yes.
L, the grade changes pretty steeply, and so obviously cost goes up quite a bit.
and you can see the existing landscape buffer that already separates the two uses, the two neighbors.
I'll make a motion to approve the accessory building for Aaron Nieswag. Did I get it? Close enough?
Close.
Nieswag.
You guys are heavy Germans. We'll-
Yeah,
How about Aaron?
as
Short
as
vowels and
presented.
everything. Yeah.
Second.
Dave seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Your wife's gonna have some fun.
Brace yourself.
His problem is he's got to work.
All right, 6E, DLC 0798.098.001-004, 319-337 Division Street, Delafield, owner, Barron Property LLC, applicant condo development. Applicant seeks preliminary feedback on a development concept to realize an 8-unit attached single-family dwelling. Roger?
Yes, Greg James, condo development,
Greg?
318 North Lake Road, Oconomowoc. Back to visit with you with revised plans, eliminating one big building, since that was a contention, now offering two 4-family buildings instead, total of 8 units. The buildings now will also comply with the present zoning, so we'll not need a zoning change or a land use plan change. Would be looking to have it approved and go on to a public hearing next month. Common Council reviewed it, the vacating of the alley behind this site, with half of that alley being added to this property. Also vacating one half of the Lake Street right-of-way. There is no street right there now. And half of that 33 feet would be added to the site as well. Easement would be created because there is a sewer and there is a path on Lake Street right-of-way right now. We'd have a new CSM prepared that would turn this back into one parcel instead of 4 single-family lots, which it's now sitting as. And the 10-foot easement at the back of this property, where there are current sewer main and laterals, would be abandoned, and the sewer would be blocked off at the main in Lake Street. So you have the drawings with the 2 buildings, the new floor plan, And I have an updated floor plan which better shows some of the changes that staff suggested after I met with you folks last time. So I'd be open to any questions or comments that Roger wants to make.
Great, thank you. Roger?
I think Mr. James has been very responsive to the request and direction from this committee. His change to make these 4 2-unit buildings is something that is allowable in this district, but is allowable as a conditional use. Originally, with the discussion about age restricted and such, that's no longer in the calculations here. It's no longer part of the design program, but we still need to conduct a public hearing because a multifamily in a CBD2 is required as a conditional use. So one of the suggestions that I have for Plan Commission is if there's any other information you'd like to see the applicant provide in preparation for the public hearing, please let him know, because that information has to be in hand before we can publish. Publication date falls in the first week of July, and I think you would have until Monday the 1st to get the application in and the fee paid so that we can get it published. So if there's any additional information you'd like to have, Mr. Gregg will have to jump through the hoop and have it in our hands the next Monday.
I'll make a comment. I think I like the fact it's a lot more appealing as being 2 structures as opposed to single. It was rather massive. I think Roger's comment about the possible aesthetics of the architecture change for something to do with the ridge line would help a ton. I think that's spot on. Perhaps breaking up each of the 2 buildings with something to do with pitch or just the elevation on the roof would help still not make it look like I don't know. It would help aesthetically quite a bit if you follow what I'm referring to, and maybe at the public hearing, if you can bring out some ideas what colors would be, if it's all one color, if you're going to break it up. I think that'd help from an aesthetic standpoint get our brains around what it would look like.
What is the material that's going to be used in this unit? Just brick? What is this?
It's all siding.
The materials that are going to be used?
Yeah.
Yes. The siding will be LP Smart Side.
Okay.
It'll be a darker gray color. The first floor front will be brick, and that brick will probably be white with gray tones in it. And then the dormers will be in a lighter gray with that same LP Smart Side. In a shake type, it'll look like a cedar shake. Yes. Of course, the units also got wider because one of the problems was the parking in the garage almost had to be stacked. Now it's side by side because each unit is 23 feet wide, so the garage interiors are 22 by 22. Ample parking.
So that bike path stays where it is, cutting across that property?
Yes, it'll
With
stay
that
where it is.
easement?
Yep.
Mhm.
Do we know
There
if
was-
the Lake Street right-of-way continues to the south? Was it planned to connect to that subdivision?
To the south?
Yeah.
Immediately
Seems
south
to me
is-
like when that subdivision came in, there was possibly gonna be a connection someday.
No,
Do we need to vacate another right-of-way is what I'm wondering, to the south?
no. If anything, it might behoove the city to vacate the right-of-way along of Lake to the north as well. This connection, the bike path connects Wells with Main, where
It tees to the Wells Street. I don't think it continues north, does it?
Does it go north?
Yeah, it does. It goes to the north, up to Maine. Would you like to see aerial?
Sure.
think
I
that's-
use
I
it
think that's already
frequently,
a
but I
street.
was turn left and go south
That's already a
there.
street.
Didn't know it continued to the north.
It's already a street.
There's the library.
Where are we? Yeah, I'm sorry, between Division and Wells.
Yeah, that I get. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one we're looking at here.
Yeah, I got the road names
It doesn't
wrong.
continue north of Wells, though? Okay.
There is an existing right-of-way.
Yeah, the
The
road
bike
is-
path does not continue to the north. The portion that Mr. James is asking to consider vacation is, of course, this alley, but half of the right-of-way here. That could be continued to the north if the neighbor to the north were to petition, for the vacation there as well. But there's nothing to the south, other than
The bike
parking lot.
path. And the bike path does continue south and it hooks into that subdivision.
Yeah, bike path comes right here along the east
And
or
weaves through
west
the
side.
woods there.
Are you familiar with that area?
And if you recall, the last time they were considering moving the path, which would have changed the crosswalk, which would have made it a little bit more dangerous. They've removed all of those and will leave the crosswalk and the path as is today.
So it's a 90-degree crossing right here.
The only concern that I would have is fire.
I'm sorry?
Can the fire trucks make it around to the back? where the
The
garage
fire
is?
trucks don't necessarily need to make it to the back. The chief has looked at this. Mr. James has been into plan staff, and the chief has looked at it. They don't need to get between the buildings to the backside. In a worst-case scenario, they have Lake Street that they could use, but they can service everything from Division Street.
Okay. It's fire protection.
Yeah, I would agree. This is more appealing than
Yeah.
last one. So, thank you.
Yes, well, thanks for your input.
So this is only a preliminary presentation. There's no action required, only your consent to have a public hearing next month.
Mr. James, what was the size of the units, did you say? The size of the units?
Pardon?
The size of each of the?
They're 1,800 square feet.
Okay.
And Tim, I just want to make sure the applicant understands your request.
Yeah, well, Roger spells it out. But each unit has a consistent ridge line across the top of the roof, and Roger in his notes suggested that be broken up somehow with a different roof line or a
Architectural feature.
some architectural feature to.
You have a firewall run between them, right?
Whether it's height
all right.
or
No, but at the
a
firewall.
varying
break
pitch in the
break
roof.
The ridge line.
Does that make sense? I mean, you understand what I'm?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure. And no. The buildings are similar right now. If
So
you're trying to
when you
make them
say-
look different,
When you say the ridge line, are you talking this line here, Tim? Or are you
I'm-
talking this line here?
There's your
I'm,
1, 2.
well, I'm echoing what Roger said, so I mean, assuming he's talking about the top of the house, the top of the house.
Okay, so you're talking
Sure
here.
you can. Change the ridge at that firewall. I'd rather have them change it here.
It's something, if you could discuss it with, they're discussing it right now, but if you could
Yes.
discuss with staff how to
Okay.
translate that into a possible improvement, I'd love to see it. That's my feedback.
okay.
So make sure everybody's clear on what we're going to do, so.
Okay, I get it, thank you.
Yep. Okay,
I'll fax you a sketch in the morning.
Okay, that'll be fine.
all right, so no further actions required, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to 6F, DELC 0793.021 and 0793.021.001, 705 Genesee Street, Delafield, owner applicant, Hendricks Commercial Properties LLC. Applicant seeks approval of a conditional use permit to allow multi-tenant residential dwelling in CBD 1 district and associated special exceptions for the building height, building setback, and 4 floors. Who would like to go first?
Kyle Gapson with Hendricks Commercial Properties, 525 3rd Street, Suite 300, Beloit. I want to start out by saying thank you to the Plan Commission and the public for the feedback, constructive criticism, and support of the project at the April Plan Commission meeting, the recent public informational meeting, the various emails, calls, in-person exchanges, and tonight. We have taken the feedback into consideration and devised a plan that we feel is a win for everybody. The presentation tonight is to get a vote on the conditional use for residential with the special exceptions for building height, number of stories, and setback. Based on our discussions at the April meeting, the main concern was the office building height of 60 feet, while the zoning code only allows for a maximum of 45 feet with the ability to go up to 55 feet with a 20-foot setback. By reducing some height on each floor, we were able to get the office building down to 55 feet. This requires a 20-foot setback by code. On Genesee Street, we have a 24-foot setback, but Main Street setback is only 12 feet. However, when looking at the project as a whole, the office building is 80 feet wide along Main Street, while the entire site is 340 feet long down Main Street, and the remainder of the site is either set back 60 feet or is open space. Another topic of discussion at the April meeting was the style of architecture, and we have made some adjustments to the exterior that we believe fits well with the feedback we received. In addition, we showed a second color scheme during the Q&A, which seemed to be better received than our initial. In this submittal, we have included 2 color schemes, and we are open to reviewing others as well. Other items requested at the last meeting were a conceptual landscaping plan, lighting plan, stormwater details, grading plans, and a comparison of the viewing angle from across Genesee Street of a 3-story building on the lot line compared to our proposed 4-story building, set back 24 feet, all of which we've included here. Beyond these changes and additional information, the uses of the project remain the same. We are proposing 2 buildings, 1 office building, and 1 residential building. The first floor of the office building will feature a market with various vendors inside and a large plaza along Genesee Street. The first floor of the residential building could include a mix of restaurant and retail tenants. Additionally, the building will have 87 underground parking stalls and 33 surface parking stalls. By going up to 4 floors, as opposed to maximizing the site at 3 floors, we were able to add the much-needed surface parking stalls and the great plaza along Genesee. Delafield is a fantastic community, and we agree with the citizens that the downtown is a special place. We are proud to be a part of this community, and it's why we have made such a large investment here already. We truly believe that this project will build on the great downtown and help keep moving Delafield forward. We appreciate your consideration of the requested conditional use with the special exceptions to bring a hub of activity, residents, and employees to one of the most prominent corners in Delafield. And with that, I will turn it over to Pete Davis and the rest of the team to discuss the design.
I'm Pete Davis from Johnson Design, 211 West 2nd Street in Oconomowoc. We had, I think, a really productive meeting last April with the Plan Commission. I think we got some really good feedback that I'd like to just kind of run through some of the highlight of the project that we changed so we can kind of get a good feel for everyone on our design direction. So a few things I want to jump into before we get to the architectural portion is the stormwater has been a great concern by the residents in the area and also the Plan Commission. And we are working with R.A. Smith, and they have a plan that will keep all of our stormwater on site and will safely bring that back into the water system without doing a runoff into other properties, without flooding, and other things like that. And we're happy to bring R.A. Smith to any other meetings that we're going to need to go through to bring that those details to you guys, and you can review that at that point. We also submitted some lighting concept plans, and so we're still playing with the lighting on that, and also with the coloring of the building. So once we get those honed in, we'll definitely be bringing those to you to review beforehand. And we also have Pat prepared to discuss anything on the traffic studies that he's prepared. He's obviously very knowledgeable with that type of stuff. So with that being said, the architecture that we previously had with the building was more of a department store look. So with some of the feedback from the Plan Commission, a few of the things we changed on the front building is to kind of transform it more into a historic turn-of-the-century hotel. A few of the things that we did to accomplish that is obviously the big thing you see is that main corner. So that's meant to funnel general public into the space, and that whole larger portion, the tower portion there, is actually all a wood paneled look, which is really going to tie in well with other buildings that we have in the city of Delafield right now. We use that a lot on the Genesee buildings all along the street there. So we're very very happy with how that turned out, and we think that's really going to be something that really ties the building together. We also have the entire first floor is going to be a wood as well, and then we took all of the cornice that was originally brick and we turned that into wood. So what that really does is creates a more residential feel, a softness to the building, and it really kind of lowers the visual height of the building. It doesn't look so massive. We also have all double hung windows planned for the building, so obviously a very residential look. And we have, we're really providing some great details that if Glenn can kind of page through some of the other views, or Roger, whoever's got at the helm there, you can really see that we're really bringing some great detail. I think there is a close-up view of that corner, Roger, if you could.
I was going to demonstrate the two buildings in comparison, last
Yes.
month versus this month. Does that help at this point?
If it would, if it makes sense, yes. We also, I want to bring up that we drastically dropped the height of the building. We took 2 feet out of the first floor, and then we took 1 foot out of the second, third, and fourth floor, dropping that total height down significantly from our submittal last 2 months ago, I should say. So that's something we're, I think we're happy with how it's turning out right now. And if you go, Roger, actually, if you could flip to, I believe that's A702. It's the sightline drawing from across the street. It's going to be after the renderings. It's going to be one of the last pages.
Got a lot of pretty pictures in here.
We do have a lot of pretty pictures. We definitely have spent a lot of time looking at all sides of this property. It's very important to us to make sure that, every view that everyone sees from all across Delafield, we're really going to see a lot of quality architecture, four-sided architecture, things that it's very important to us at Johnson Design that we make sure we have all sides look great. Right there, Roger. Thank you. So what we did there is we superimposed 2 buildings. The taller building that is set back approximately 24 feet from the street there is our current building. And then if we have a 3-story building as well right up against the sidewalk. And as you can see, there's virtually no difference in visual height from across the street there. So, and if someone is walking actually on the west side of Genesee Street, the 3-story building will look significantly taller. If you can imagine that sight line there. So that's something that I think we're very happy with how that turned out. In something that, I've worked with Hendricks now for probably 8, 9, 10 years, and one thing I can tell you about what the company is they do extremely, extremely high quality buildings. There's no corners cut. They really go above and beyond what they really need to get a quality building especially in a project like this. So I'm really happy to be able to work with them on this. And I know we're asking for a lot of different things here. We're asking for height, we're asking for number of stories, we're asking for setbacks, and I know that doesn't meet the zoning code, but one thing that we really want to keep in everyone's mind here is that these conditional uses are here for a reason. And when you have a special project and a special user and owner of this property that's going to bring a lot of great value to this community, we really need to hopefully look past the few things that we're looking for and hopefully vote yes on this. So if there's any questions, I'm more happy to answer them.
Roger?
I think I gave a very detailed report to the Planning Commission. I think we're all familiar with the issues. I would appreciate it this evening if we could stick to our deliberation and conversation with the applicant. If we could stick to the 3 basic issues of the height, the setback, and the 3 floors before we get into any aesthetic issues, because that's the heart of the matter. We need to make a recommendation to the council in regards to whether or not this is something that we will support. We'll support with modifications or recommend to them deny because it's a conditional use. Part of that conditional use needs to incorporate what we are titling as special exceptions. And those special exceptions would be for the height, because it exceeds ordinance requirements, for setback, because it doesn't conform to ordinance requirements, and for the 4 stories versus the 3 stories, which is an existing regulation in the CBD 1 district. You heard in citizens' comments, Mrs. Holton identify that there are legal issues with this, and there are, but they can be overcome. Based on a recommendation from the city attorney, we have a couple options available to us, and the most logical is, and you weigh in if you need to, that based on our previous practice, the inclusion of special exceptions can be acted on by this body and incorporated into the conditional use, recommended to council, and if you choose, contingent upon modification of the ordinance. And the reason we say that is because with Act 67 and the changes as to how we can implement conditional uses, this is a legitimate legal response. However, our ordinance does not reflect that. It's not unusual. In fact, let me explain that. As I understand, the village of Summit, faced with the same sort of issues, has been waiting for conditional uses that come in to respond accordingly and modify their ordinance as they consider applications. So it's not unusual for the Planning Commission to take this sort of action. Not only that, but also, as Lynn pointed out, this legal issue is for the council to decide. And based on the advice of the city attorney, the Planning Commission should be encouraged to judge this proposal based on the merits of the plan and not worry about the legal procedures that can be worked out. So with that preamble, I would encourage you all to discuss with the petitioner those 3 topics, the height, the stories, the setback. They have a reasonable expectation of making some progress this evening, and it's your obligation to share with them your opinions and facilitate moving this forward, be it with, as proposed, with modifications or denial.
Roger, I have a question then, specifically with regard to what was just mentioned by Mr. Davis, is it?
Correct.
And then in your report, you talked, we'll deal with the height right now. In your report, it talks about both of the proposed buildings exceed the maximum building height. Maximum building height is established by ordinance at 35 feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
By the letter of the ordinance, it is.
Because I think Mr. Davis was talking about 45 feet.
Yes, and that was the direction that the applicant had been given based on our practices and policies here in the city of Delafield for the past 18 years. They had been implemented prior to that, and that policy was continued.
That's based on that 2-to-1 setback, right?
Yeah, so.
For every 1 foot above the 35 feet.
Right. The code is very clear. It's a 35-foot maximum with an additional foot for every 2 foot of setback with a maximum of 45. That's what the code says. Exceptions may have been granted in the past for other buildings to get them higher, but that's what the code says. So anything that you approve over and above that is going to require a code amendment, which your job is just realize that if you recommend that they be allowed to exceed the code, it has to come along with a recommendation for a code amendment that will go to the council. The council must address the code amendment first. They will hold a public hearing on the code amendment before they vote on this particular proposal, because that code amendment is not going to change the code for just this applicant, but it's going to change the code for all future applicants.
Let's be clear on that code amendment. It's not to amend the CBD1 height, but rather it is to amend the Plan Commission's ability to act on special exceptions.
And so we'd want to, with our recommendation, we'd want to include the types of parameters a special exception would be granted for height. Correct. Like, otherwise it's just whatever you feel like.
Right.
So there has to be some sort of guideline as far as a trade-off to say, if you're going to be more than 45 feet tall for a flat roof building, a special exception can be granted under X circumstances. And
Right.
say like what types of things you would want in return for that accommodation, like underground parking or green space or setback, or, I mean, we'd want to have some idea of what we'd be asking for in exchange.
Correct, but that does not need to be part of the action or deliberation this evening.
Okay.
But does that need to be ironed out before this project would move forward?
Well, your action this evening would be to make a recommendation
I
to council.
understand that.
If you choose with a recommendation to modify the ordinance to allow the plan commission to act on special exceptions, then the council, if agreeing to that, will send back to this body the formulation of those text amendments, and we would conduct a public hearing here, make a recommendation to the board or the common council as to what the changes would be.
It's different than in the past. After 2017, when the legislature changed the land use laws, the planning commission was given more flexibility. They're not now, right? They're not
Correct.
now. It has to be a code amendment that affects all future buildings with its criteria. You're not to, I don't want you to worry about that. I want you to think about this application, this height, this number of floors, that part will be worked out. I want you to focus on the three questions at hand.
Well, that's
right?
why I started it with the height being 35 according to Roger and 45 according to Mr. Davis. And I needed clarification because then the next part of the report, Roger, indicates the basic height of the office building, according to your report, which is 57.5 feet, amounting to 22.5 additional building height, which is quite a high percentage from the original 35%. I think we just need to be clear about the numbers here, if that's correct. Do you have a dispute with those numbers?
Well, I guess it depends on where we're classifying. The heights that I spoke to are to our roof line. There are parapet walls that do extend above that roof line, but the heights that I'm stating, the rear building and the front building are to the actual roof.
So in your office proposal, you're talking about the height then is 54 feet?
55.
55?
The front building would be 55.
And as opposed to what, at least this report was 57.5, so it's 2 feet less.
Yeah. Correct.
And
the rear building is 52.
52
to the roof line.
To the roof line, and
Yes.
then Rogers is
Rogers numbers are correct. They're just they're going to
55.3.
the parapet wall.
Okay, so
It's just I mean,
And the
I
same-
agree with you. I'd like to have clarification.
yeah, I just think we need to deal with the same numbers.
Yep. Yep.
And one of the issues in determining the net between the height and the maximum allowed is in determining that height. I think the reference was used by Roger in his report, and correct me if I'm wrong, about the average space. What is it? The average number of your bottom line based to the height. One of them was, according to one of your reports, was almost equivalent to Dobkin Street, the base of the parking lot on the residential side.
Yeah.
And there was another report 6 feet higher. And when I was looking at this report, I thought there was a little bit of a discrepancy as where did your base start to compute the elevation? In other words, does it start in the
And I just
garage?
want to interject there. Where does the base start is an issue we always have on every building that gets built, right?
Right.
It's an important criteria. People can change the grade from what's there now and they start, so it's a very good question. And it's a question that we always have, and it's a difficult question to answer.
Well, I can't speak to everyone else's buildings, but on our building, due to its fact that it's a commercial building, we have to maintain certain ADA accessibility and things like that. So my first floor is virtually at grade around the building, except on the top.
Commercial building.
The commercial building, because I can't have steps going up to my building and have it be an accessible building. So both buildings are fully ADA compliant, so I have, my first floor is right at basically sidewalk level, essentially, short of maybe a little bit of drainage, but that's where I take my numbers from.
So are there numbers from the engineers rendering and the architects rendering from your group the same?
What
In other words,
engineer?
with renderings to determine that base, is it, you have both, all of your submissions that you have are based on that same number?
Yes.
Okay. Now, having said that, if we have the height of, just say it's 50 in the office, like it's 54, let's just say, and which 35 is the maximum, so then we have 19 feet difference, just for lack of a better term. Then you have to do times 2 to get a setback under these rules that are currently in place, right?
I think I follow you. I know.
The setback is determined by the
Right.
the difference between maximum height and your proposal.
I think Tim brought up a point earlier that some of the, special exceptions that we're proposing here is a lot of site parking, some public space, both between the buildings and on Genesee Street. And I think with the reason we're trying to justify ourselves for adding this additional height is that we need the additional square footage to make the project be really a viable project. We could go down to the 3 stories and the 35 max height and get there, but we would all of a sudden lose all of our surface parking and our public space. And I think it's more important on this project for both visually and public perception to kind of give back to this community a little bit, not put all the parking on the other streets and that parking lot over by Fish Hatchery, and give this public space back. So that those are the types of things that we're giving up, and willing to accept for you guys.
Yeah, I understand the trade-off that you're offering on that. I just want to make sure we had the numbers straight, that it was your prior, or the plan was 24-foot setback versus the difference between 35 and 55, which would have been, say, 40. So there's a 16-foot difference. Would that be a fair assessment on the office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just talking right now, trying to
Right.
leverage this thing out based on fact. And if we can agree on some of the facts, then we can talk about what else we can do.
So, basically, for my clarification to you guys, from my first floor to the top of my, rubber roof on top of that front building, the east building, is 55 feet.
Okay. So, and if its maximum was 35, 20 times 2, 40. But let's,
Yep.
I've heard what you say about the leverage through the negotiation process, which I value, because that is a factor to consider.
Yep.
And it's a part of our discretion. So I welcome your input on that. I just wanted to get those facts straight. And one of the things that we also, when I was looking at this from not the office one, but the residential one, we're just talking about 2 buildings, or no more than 2, correct?
Correct.
And the second building has the same issues, but the setback isn't as much an issue because it's not on Genesee Street.
Well,
Right.
I guess it depends where you take the setback from. I mean, we are close to the property line on the north.
Right.
So, yes, we are asking for exception on that building as well.
And that's what I'm getting at. Now, is it true that in looking at this, I think there was a reference maybe in Roger's report about the balconies on the residential area? Do those balconies go beyond the boundary line?